Lieutenant Colonel Gowon and Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu went to Aburi. By the time they returned, there were actors in Nigeria who were telling them, look, you have to repudiate the agreement that you had. And it led to a civil war. What's happened is that they had an agreement at Asoro, which was a pretty good agreement for both sides. But then the governor has gone back to Rivers State. And then there are some people who probably, maybe they feel that their own interests, personal interests, not the state's interests, their own personal interests are being, threatened. And they're now encouraging the governor to violate the agreement. Listen, it wasn't a perfect agreement, but at least it was an attempt to bring peace. And if both sides can adhere to the resolutions reached, I think there's going to be peace in Rivers State.
So two issues you raised. One of them, you talked about how this is a security crisis and the president stepped in to resolve it. And you also mentioned how the resolution itself. But I want to start with the issue of the president stepping in to find a solution quickly. Some would say, look, this issue was already in court and was going to be resolved one way or the other, and that perhaps the president should have waited for that for the court to resolve it. And I want you to react to that.
Well, it was human beings who took the case to court, and then it's the same human beings who took the case to court that went before the president. So, I mean, in a situation where you have people reaching an out-of-court settlement, I mean, it should be in the best interest of everybody. If you have a court case, that's a last-ditch scenario. But then when you're able to bring the people, because, I mean, at the end of the day, nobody really knows. A court case is like a war. Nobody really knows who's going to win a war. So what the president did and what his national security advisor did by bringing the dramatic personnel together to try to reach an out-of-court settlement, I think it's quite good. It's happened in the United Kingdom. It's happened in the United States, where you bring people together, not just even within the United States, even when you have countries in the Middle East. For example, President Carter, he was able to get President Anwar Sadat of Egypt, and then with the Israeli Prime Minister together at the Camp David Accord, and they reached an agreement, and that agreement ended the state of war between Egypt and Israel. So we have precedent for that, both in international politics and then intra-national politics and then in domestic politics. So people who are having that kind of thought, again, like I said, some people, you got to understand, Rivers State is a pretty unique state. It's not like a states in, let's say, the Southwest. So if you look at Nigeria, if you look at the dynamics of power in Nigeria, the Southwest, they have a conservative culture to guide them. If you look at the North, they have a conservative religion to guide them. In the South, and especially in Rivers State, they have Naira. So what you have a lot of ego playing in a place like that. That's why if you look at the history of Rivers State, 24 years we've had democracy. Not one governor has been in good relations with his preceding governor. So you had, first of all, you had Mr. Peter Orderly, and then he handed over to Omehia, who was removed, and then you had Amechi. Amechi wasn't on good terms with Peter Orderly. Amechi left and was succeeded by Nyesom Wike. Nyesom Wike wasn't on good terms with Amechi. And then now you got Simi Fubara. Obviously, the same thing is happening. So the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. If you see what's been happening in Rivers State and you are a prudent president, you don't want a repeat of that, it's best for you to bring people and say, okay, yes, I know this case is in court, but can you agree to this? Can you agree to that? And you get the middle ground.
And you raised very interesting points about, the history of governance in Rivers. And I will get to that shortly because some people think, look, that is at the heart of this very issue. But I want to go back to what you said earlier about the resolution. Some would say that, look, when you look at this resolution, it's just item 2, which talks about the all impeachment proceedings initiated against the governor of Rivers State, against the governor of Rivers State by the Rivers State House of Assembly should be dropped immediately. Now, that's the only thing that seems to be beneficial to the governor. For you, when you look at this resolution, is it a win-win situation for all parties?
I think it's a win-win situation for all parties because you had a status quo before and you had a breach of that status quo. What the resolution is saying is that let's get back to the status quo. And what was the status quo before? You had a House of Assembly that was working on its own and you had the governor. And so if the two parts of the, or let's say the two arms, the third arm is the judiciary, obviously, and there was some challenge there. The governor tried to do one or two things with some person in the judiciary. But if you can have the two arms of government, the legislature and the executive, going back to the status quo, then it benefits everybody. You got to understand something there. Nyesom Wike is in Abuja. in Nyesom Wike right now, yeah, he might be pulling the strings, but at the end of the day, the governor is in charge in his state. So if I were in Nyesom Wike, what I would do is I would abide by that agreement. If I were the governor, I would abide by the agreement. And then you can pick up the mantle, you can pick up the gauntlet and then go back to war again in 2027 when there is another election around the corner. But to be in a state of perpetual electioneering, perpetual crisis for 4 years, it's not going to be in the interest of both the governor and Nyesom Wike, as well as the people of Rivers State. There has to be a resolution of that crisis.
But it would seem as though this intervention only resolves one half of the issue. And when you consider that the State Assembly is still in crisis mode and the court cases, the PDP is saying that they are going to institute a case against those 27 defecting lawmakers. So it doesn't look like this issue has actually been resolved.
Well, here's the thing, what the agreement said is that all cases that were filed by all the people, all the parties to the agreement, and in this case, all the parties to the agreement are the governor, the minister of the FCT, and then the House of Assembly members. In Rivers State, the governor is statutorily the head of the party. If you look at that, it's just like, for instance, now in Nigeria, in the All Progressive Congress, the president of Nigeria is the head of the party. It doesn't matter if somebody elsewhere is masquerading as maybe national leader, or maybe you have a titular role as chairman. Once you have a president in place, he is the head of the party nationwide. The same thing in the state. Once you have a governor of the party in place, then he becomes the head of that party. So if the governor is willing, then the governor can put pressure to bear on the state PDP to withdraw all cases in court. The only way that the state is going to go, that the state PDP is going to want to continue to go to court, is if the governor is not in league with them. And that's what I've said, that if you look at the agreement, it goes back to the status quo. It's in the governor's best interest, as well as the minister of the FCT, to reach a situation whereby they go back to the status quo, and then if they cannot find any permanent solution, then they can, let's say, reignite this war in 2027. But to go for 4 years in a state of crisis, in a state of electionary mode, it's not going to be good for the mental health of both people involved, and it's not also going to be good for the development of the state.
What about the PDP at the national level, if they decide to take this particular case to court, especially against the 27 defecting lawmakers?
Yeah, but that's the thing, if you have the PDP at the national level, I mean, the PDP at the national level on its own, they are not going to go to court. They have to go to court through the PDP at the state level. So you can't have, for instance, now, you can't have the PDP at the national level taking the lawmakers to court. They're not going to have the loci. So in law, you have something called the local standard. So they do not have the loci. They have to go through the state chapter of the party. And if the state chapter of the party is saying, okay, we're not going to go to court, we're going to withdraw this case from court, then, there's nothing that the national PDP can do. Look, I'm going to say this here. The PDP ought to have stepped in even before the president stepped in. If I were the PDP national chairman, I would have convened maybe like an elders council or a national working committee council to go to Rivers State to try to bring some peace. If you look at Rivers State is surrounded by PDP states. To one side you've got Bayelsa, who has a PDP governor, and then you also have Akwa Ibom, which has a PDP governor. These states, their governors, even if the PDP on its own at the national level or the state level did not intervene, they could have intervened. Because they failed to intervene, nature abhors a vacuum. The president has stepped in. So at the end of the day, what we want is peace. And then if the peace can hold until the next election, and then after that, you see, if you look at history, look at Lagos State, the current president had an issue with Ambody, who was a governor that he brought. But he did not try to, shorten the governor's tenure. He allowed the governor finish his tenure. And then when it was time for re-election, he ensured with the party in the state that the governor did not come back. That is what they have to do. Wait until 2027, and then they can flex their muscles then.
People have asked or talked about the weaker factor within the PDP and why it's difficult for the PDP to address. It almost seeming as though, because he has not left the party. He hasn't said he has left or he has moved to any other party. It's almost as though one person is now bigger than the entire party. What exactly is going on in that particular regard? Why is it difficult for the PDP to address the Wike factor in the party?
Well, you have to understand, for the PDP, Wike is like a bull in a china shop. He's like a bull in a china shop. You're probably not going to like what I'm going to say about Nyesom Wike. Nyesom Wike is an egomaniac. If you look at his personality, he's very driven by ego, not by conscience. And people like that, you got to be careful. You cannot just descend to their level and then begin to fight them like that. No, you've got to use wisdom, you've got to use strategy, you've got to use tactics. So what is happening is that the man has not said that he has left the party or is going to, is leaving the party. The PDP has to wait for him to make a stand, to take a stand. If he leaves, then okay, good riddance. If he decides to stay in the party and doesn't leave the party, then they have to find a way to endure him, because what cannot be avoided must be endured. If you go on a frontal attack with him, he has a lot of residual power in Rivers State to, will I say, just bring about some crisis. People like Wike are not very good builders, but they are very good destroyers. You got to understand that. I'm going to say that one more time. People like Wike are not very good builders. They're very good destroyers. So when you know that that's the case, then you got to be careful. What can the man do? He's no longer governor. Wike does not have a history of being loyal to people who are no longer in the position to help him politically. If you look at Wike, he was with Amechi, and then when he got what he wanted from Amechi, he ditched Amechi. And then he became in bed with Dame Pesha Jonathan. When he got what he wanted, despite their public protestations that it's not true, he actually ditched that relationship. So by the time Wike has gotten what he wants from, let's say, President Bola Tinubu, he's going to do the same thing, because the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Wike is somebody that you manage until you put him very carefully and tactically in a position whereby he can do the least damage.
If I may quickly comment, you were saying that Wike is not a good builder, he's a destroyer, as you have said. But some people would say, look, he was very instrumental to building the PDP into what it is today, whether it's through energy and resources. And so that he probably feel aggrieved not to have gotten that support like he has said over time. Shouldn't that also be what the PDP should have addressed to, looking at his contributions over time to the party, to ensure that, look, it is not just about sanctioning him, it's also about settling the issues?
Well, here's the thing. If you follow me on social media and if you follow my column, I have said before that the PDP made a mistake in not giving its running mate ticket, the deputy ticket, to Nyesom Wike. I said that. We should have made him the running mate to Waziri Atiku Abubakar. I said that. But you see, that is a ship that has sailed. So we cannot be going forward by looking backward. Look, it's happened. We made that mistake. We didn't give him a ticket. But you are misquoting me. I didn't say that Wike is not a builder. I said Wike is a better destroyer than he is a builder. He can build. He was able to build the G5 into a formidable bloc within the People's Democratic Party. But what I'm saying is that the man is a better destroyer than he is a builder. Right now, he is in a position whereby he cannot do much building, but he can do much destruction. So that ship has sailed. The People's Democratic Party, this is a man who wanted to be president. Failing that, he wanted to be vice president. Right now, the People's Democratic Party are not in a position to offer him the presidency or the vice presidency, except maybe in 2027, maybe they can offer him that ticket. But for right now, they have outlived their usefulness to him from his own point of view. I think he's seen that maybe there's some kind of redemption that he can get with the APC and with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But if you look at the man's history, and you can only judge people's future by their history. This is a man who's not able to sustain loyalty to people when he feels that they are not in position to help him politically.
All right, so I want to tap into your experience as a former presidential spokesperson and one who has seen how governance runs at the highest level. Because some people are insinuating that the governor, rather, Fubara, may have signed this resolution out of duress, that he probably was coerced into signing this agreement. You would have seen things like this happen, maybe not publicized, during the time of President Goodluck Jonathan. What do you think would have played out in this particular situation? Do you think that he would have been under duress in signing that resolution?
That's not true. I understand. Like I told you, I've given you the history of Rivers State. Rivers State is one of the most ethnically diverse states in Nigeria. A lot of people are surprised to learn that there are over 45 ethnic groups in Rivers State. You hear of Andoni and you hear of Ndoni and you think they're the same. No, they're different. So there is there's the uniting force in River State is not like maybe in a place in any of the 6 southwestern states. So where you have, okay, there are various subgroups of Yoruba, but they all subsume themselves under that Yoruba identity. In River State, it's not like that. So, I mean, when you have that, you're going to be having people who are just going to be coming with their various agenda. I was a presidential spokesman. Everything that is done in the presidential villa is recorded. It's actually recorded, audio and camera. The governor could not have been placed under duress because it was being recorded. At the end of the day, if the presidency will want to put to shame those people making this allegation, they just release the video. You know, these people were brought together at the presidential villa. The president came in, the president brought in the both parties and said, okay, look, how can we have a resolution? From what I understand, you know, they tabled out some certain, agendas that might resolve the situation on the ground, and both parties signed. There was no duress. Like I told you, this is again like deja vu. What happened in 1967 after Lieutenant Colonel Gowon and Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu went to Aburi, and the Ghanaian leader helped them to sign an agreement which they called the Aburi Accord. When they got back home, people who felt threatened by that agreement began to work on the minds of Gowon and Ojukwu, and eventually that agreement collapsed. So what happened is that they signed a freely, a free will agreement at the presidential villa. They went back to their various parties, they went back to their various states, their various situations, and then people there on the ground have looked at it and said, no, maybe this does not really favor me. Not the governor, not the state, but me. And then they began whispering in the ears of the governor, and that's how the agreement, this scenario that the governor was placed under duress to sign the agreement, it's not true. And the governor himself has said it's not true. Through his own commissioner, he has said it's not true. And the reason why the governor will say it's not true is because he knows that the whole thing would have been video recorded.
Mm. And I just want to ask, because I've listened to lawyers on this matter over and over again, and some have said, look, this agreement does not have the force of the law. Do you see your parties abiding by this resolution? And what happens if Governor Fubara comes under pressure and decide not to follow through with this resolution?
River State is a state whereby the violence take it by force. I mean, if you excuse me using that scriptural language. So you have people in River State who, some of them have standing armies. You know, in a nationality, they have a standing army. Some of them have that. So when these kinds of people begin to whisper to the governor or to talk to the governor in private, I mean, anything can happen. What I would recommend to the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is that, look, they should get back to the governor and say, okay, you signed this agreement, a free will agreement. Are you now not happy with it? If you're not happy with it, can you tell us behind the scenes, the press is not here, what parts of this agreement you're not happy with, so that maybe we can talk to the other dramatic person, in this case, Nyesom Wike, and see if he can bend over backward to accommodate you. Because if you allow River State to degenerate and this crisis to escalate, it can really affect Nigeria's oil production output. It will spread. There's going to be a contagious effect to states like Bayelsa and Delta, possibly not Akwa Ibom, because Akwa Ibom doesn't have a restive nature. And by the time you have that, you go, look, don't forget that Nigeria was instrumental to the global economic recession of 2007-2008 because of the crisis in the Niger Delta. We cannot afford a repeat of that, especially right now when our economy, is just beginning to come out of the doldrums that it was put by the Buhari administration.
And I wanted to ask you, because I want to go back to what you said earlier about, I said I was going to revisit the history of governance in River State. And some have said that, look, this particular resolution sets a bad precedent in that regard, when it looks like, as they have said, you're siding with the predecessor over the successor. And so you are not giving the successor the freedom and liberty to govern as he should. And so I wanted to ask you about that, how to address that particular issue once and for all, if it's even possible to address it in the first place in River State.
Look, Nigerians tend to be very emotive people, and because of that, it's very easy to excite Nigerians. And it's not just Nigerians, sub-Saharan Black Africans tend to be like that. Maybe it's going to change by the time education gets down to the grassroots to a larger level. But for now, it's like that. Look, political godfatherism, or what some people might even call mentorship, exists in every human institution. It exists in every human institution. If you look at, let's say, religion, for instance, if you look at someone like Bishop Oyedepo, he knelt down before Pastor Adeboye. Pastor Adeboye prayed for him and his wife. If you look at banks, you have situations whereby people like Tony Elumelu have people that they've mentored in the banking sector. If you look at maybe something like sports, you have people. Recently, I think it was Victor Osimhen, he gave tribute to one of the older Eagles that, look, this man mentored me and brought me to the point where I am. So there's no, in entertainment, you have the same thing. You have, right now, one of the biggest Nigerian stars is Wizkid. Wizkid did say that he was mentored by Banky W to get to the level that he is. So in politics, you have the same thing. If you, look, a mentor or a political godfather shortens the distance between you and success. If you want to go on your own, it's going to be very difficult for you. It is possible, but it's most unlikely that you're going to be successful. So political godfatherism, whether in business you call it mentorship, or whether in, would I say, in the music industry, whether you call it, even in crime. I mean, even in crime, you know, what people, in the mafia, in Yahoo and 419, which are evil things, which we don't want in society, there is still that relationship there. So when Nigerians begin to say, no, we're going to kill political godfatherism, who was the political godfather of Muhammadu Buhari? Muhammadu Buhari would not have gotten to the position of presidency if not for Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So it is a fact of life. If you look at even in scripture, for example, if you look at even in scripture, there was, would I say, that kind of mentorship relationship. You had Elijah and you had Elisha. You had Saul and you had Samuel. So it is a fact of life. And people have to understand that. Now, the only way that we can really, would I say, resolve these kinds of crises is if we can look at a loci where it works very well, and that is the Southwest. In the Southwest, like I said earlier, because they have a conservative culture to guide them, they're able to work with this, whereby humility is not seen as stupidity. Now, when you have a political godfather, you know, a political godfather, I mean, also, you do not have to be overbearing. You have to understand that, okay, look,
absolutely, Reno. Sorry to jump in, because that's where I was going to go next. That again, first of all, humility from the one who has been enabled, but the enabler also has to give the one who has been enabled the breathing space to govern, which is where the problem usually is, where you want to be the one who enforces, you know, all of the rules and regulations in the state.
I was coming to that. You see, that's why I said that, you know, in Rivers State, they don't have a conservative religion to guide them in that regard, or a conservative culture to guide them in that regard. So they've got to learn from a local like the Southwest, where it works perfectly well. Somebody like Nyesom Wike is a person who is, I think he's about 56 years old. I don't think that you can teach him new tricks. He's a person that is driven by ego. If you see Nyesom Wike having an interview with journalists, he doesn't even allow journalists to talk. He wants to dominate them. That is his personality, it's his nature. So if you have such a person, like I said before, you know, you have to, he's a bull in a china shop, you have to manage him until he's in a position whereby he can cause the least damage. And that's what the governor should have done. You know, the governor, the governor is not unfamiliar with Nyesom Wike's personality. He worked with him for, let's say, a number of years. So he knew the kind of person he was getting involved with. He should have, in my own case, you know, tried to, adopt a more reconciliatory approach to this. Look, if you want to turn the ship, you have two options available to you. You can turn the ship abruptly, in which case you could break the rudder, or you can turn the ship gently, until you have it going in the direction that you want it to go. Olusegun Obasanjo, another person from the Southwest, he was brought in packaged by General Babangida and Abdulsalami Abubakar. And this was a man that was very gentle in taking power from the bloc that gave him power. And by 2007, he was the most influential Black African politician in the whole world. So they have to learn from where this model has worked best, which is the Southwest. And failure to do that, there's always going to be crisis in Rivers State. Like I said, you have never had a situation in Rivers State whereby a succeeding governor is having good relations with a preceding governor. They have to learn from the Southwest, otherwise that state will perpetually be in crisis.
So I'm pressed for time, and I have so many questions to ask you. I know you're a lawyer as well, and I wanted to ask you about, you know, the four Because there's that provision in the resolution that says, that budget should be represented to the House of Assembly when it's rightly constituted. And people are wondering if it forms a quorum or not. But I also know that one of your strengths is also, the economy. And I wanted to talk to you about the Naira. And I think I will just stay on the Naira. When you look at what's happening, the Naira to the dollar, it is biting really hard on people. The prices of things are increasing every other day, especially in this season now that, it's Christmas and New Year. What should we do, or what should the government be doing now to just in general language, if I will use the word help in that language, the Naira, get back to at least when it was 700 or 750 against the dollar?
Well, what we have to do right now is the former administration, the previous administration, Muhammadu Buhari's administration, made some very terrible mistakes. They should have floated the Naira. They didn't float the Naira, and they kept on spending $1.5 billion every month defending the Naira. Now, this administration has taken the right steps. It's taken the right steps to float the Naira. However, the president has to be more assertive. I know right now he has a governor of the central bank in place, and probably he wants to give them independence, but he's got to be more assertive. You, as the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, you do not take directives from the president, but you take guidance. You can take guidance from the president. If I were the president, I would have called the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria and said, look, you have to deny forex or foreign exchange or any kind of, license to any government agency that wants to patronize a foreign good or service over a Nigerian goods or service. Take, for instance, the National Assembly going to buy those SUVs from out of the country. Look, if I were the president, I would have put pressure on the Central Bank of Nigeria to make it impossible, not cooperate with them. When we begin to patronize made in Nigeria goods and services, then we're going to see the Naira, because right now the Naira is being floated. The laws of demand and supply are solely responsible for the value of Naira. So by the time we begin to change our consumption habits, then we're not going to see the kind of movement in the Naira that we want to see. And the citizenry, the people, for this kind of, behavior to trickle down, they have to see it in their government. When you tell the people of Nigeria to buy made in Nigerian goods and they are seeing the National Assembly spend so much money buying foreign goods, it's not going to encourage them. The president failed in that regard as far as I'm concerned, and it's something that we can correct. Because the National Assembly, these are people, you do not have sufficient patriotism in the National Assembly for this kind of, pro-Nigeria stance to take place. You've got, options in Nigeria. You've got Innocent. They could have bought those vehicles from Innocent. Now, that is the part of the government. For the people of Nigeria are, we do not want to do the right things. We want to eat our cake and have it. Currently in Nigeria, 76.7 million people use MTN. Another 45 million people use Airtel. You cannot have 130 million Nigerians spending $20 million every day that is going to South Africa and India, and just you want the Naira to appreciate. It cannot happen. There's an option. Why can't you use Glo? If you have those 130 million Nigerians using Glo, if they start using Glo tomorrow, I'm telling you, immediately it's going to have a positive impact on the value of the Naira. The value of the Naira is just going to explode immediately. So you see, even if you have Nigerians, even in their dressing habits, Nigerians, we like to wear Balenciaga, Louis Vuitton, Gucci. Now, wealthy Nigerians, elite Nigerians should begin to change their consumption habits, from the president to the governors to the Senate president to legislators. Start dressing Nigerian. Spend your money in Nigeria. That's going to make the Naira improve. And then finally, I'm going to say this also. This is very important. We need to have a policy in place whereby there is some kind of tax, punitive tax for government institutions and the private sector that patronize foreign goods and services. For instance, if you are a minister or a member of the ministries, departments, and agencies, and you are flying to a route that Air Peace can fly, they actually have planes going that route, but you choose to fly British Airways, then you should be made to pay a tax. Whether you're in the private sector or in the public sector, you should be made to pay a tax. We should patronize made in Nigeria goods and services, and that's the only way that Naira can appreciate.
And many people will say, look, they agree with you, because when you watch American movies, there's this deliberate This deliberate intent, or this is intention, is very intentional when they position their brands. You hardly find them use phones in their movies that are not made in America, or cars that are not made in America. Very intentional. But some people will also say, look, for network, for example, I'm going to use the one that provides the best service for me. And I'm going to use the one that has the best network in my area. It's not necessarily about whether it's a Nigerian brand or not. It's just what works where I live at the moment, and what offers me the best services in terms of data and calls. And that's probably how it works. And so if we have to patronize Nigerian, made in Nigerian products, they have to be an upscaling. And so where should that come from? Is it those who are manufacturing or these goods and services, or from the government enabling them to thrive?
That's why I said that Nigerians want to eat their cake and have it. The only way that a company provides better goods and services is by patronage. So by the time you begin to patronize them more, their revenue increases and they're able to plow back their revenue and profit to have better products and better services. So you have to have sacrifice. You've got to have people saying, okay, we're going to sacrifice. If you look at India, India had a company called Tata. Tata was a very, poor in terms of service delivery. If you look at what they call keke in Nigeria, they call keke marwa and all of that. That's what Tata used to do. But Indians deliberately said, okay, you know what, we've got better alternatives from the West, but we're going to patronize Tata. That's patriotism. We're going to patronize Tata. And then eventually Tata became so good that now Tata is now the #1 provider of railway services in the United Kingdom, not India, in the United Kingdom. Tata is so good that when India, 3 months ago, when they landed a spacecraft in the moon, Tata was part of the people that provided the technical expertise. So I know that Glo probably might not be as good as MTN and Airtel, but as a Nigerian, if you love Nigeria, if you love the Naira and you want the Naira to appreciate, then you've got to make that, look at what I'm using, sacrifice. You've got to make that sacrifice. Without sacrifice, there's not going to be progress. I know that maybe Toyota and Nissan might make better vehicles than Innocent, but you've got to sacrifice and patronize Innocent. Don't say to yourself that, oh, he's one Igbo man. Even if he's an Igbo man, buy Igbo made. I'm very upset. Am I still there? Can you hear me?
Yes, you are. You are.
Yeah, I'm very upset when I watched NAFDAC, and then they caught some people. I think they were making fake wines, and then they were making some fake pharmaceuticals, and then they arrested them, they threw them in jail. That is not the way a nation grows. Those people, what you do is that you get them, and you say, okay, look, you are able to make fake wines, you're able to make fake pharmaceutical grade medicine. What do you need to create a genuine one, an authentic one? Is it that maybe you need training so that you know how to register a company, you know how to register a patent? And then that's how you begin to help your own, local people build your own industrial complex.
Thank you so much, Reno. Always a pleasure speaking with you. I hope Nigerians are listening and will begin to patronize made in Nigerian products. Former presidential spokesman for former President Goodluck Jonathan, Reno Omokri, thank you so much for talking to us.
And thank you for having me. May God bless you.
All right, that was, we deviated a bit just to look at the Naira, but we're going to take a break now. When we return, we're going to have someone from Rivers State speak to us about this particular Rivers crisis, which is now, well, somehow, some will say resolved by the intervention of the president. Let's take a break, we'll return.
There is always more to a story than the screaming headline. The part of a story that is not told casts a shadow. It's like the part of an object that is not reached by light. On TVC News, I'm able to explore the many angles there are to a story, talking to stakeholders, asking the difficult questions, and digging for facts. I believe the viewers are able to make a better decision if they're well informed and understand not just a part, but the complete story. TVC News, first with breaking news.
Information is power, information is security, information is knowledge. On Labor Lens, we believe that working people around the world have real questions of their own. They want to know how the world of work operates, what it means to the employer of labor, how policies affect workers in the workplace. On Labor Lens, I am sure we engage effectively the organized labor, organized private sector, and government to get out of them information workers are in need of. I am Sharon Ijason, asking questions that make you get sense of the workplace.
In the month of December, the 1st is World AIDS Day, while the 2nd of December is International Day for the Abolition of Slavery. On the 3rd is International Day of Persons with Disabilities. On the 4th of December, attention shifts as the day is dedicated to World Wildlife Conservation. The 7th is International Civil Aviation Day, and on the 9th is International Anti-Corruption Day. On the 10th is Human Rights Day, and on the 21st is World Basketball Day. 25th is Christmas Day, when Christians celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ. The day after is Boxing Day, which is on the 26th, and on the 31st is New Year's Eve. Brace yourself and tune in to TVC News for in-depth reporting and analysis on these days. TVC News, first with breaking news.
Sometimes it's the story that calls. At other times, the people just want to be heard.
School, I need students, but I need teachers.
Can't continue like this.
Their voices re-echoing through time itself.
We haven't done anything. If the tide is high, everybody run for safety.
Their tears leave a sweet, sour taste for all their demands. A familiar call beckoning for change. In our world, no one expects a disaster to happen. But when it does, we'll be there to x-ray all sides, from the east to the west, north and south. Community Forum will examine the oddities and challenges to economic development, as well as issues yearning for government intervention. Watch fresh episodes of Community Forum on Sundays by 9:30 p.m. only on TVC News.
All right, welcome back, and thanks for staying with us on Standpoint. We're on that particular issue in Rivers State, where the president has now intervened in the crisis there with an 8-point resolution. Now, some have said, look, that resolution is a welcome development. Any solution is a solution, whether it's a political solution. But some have called it a constitutional crisis. Let's bring in someone from Rivers State. He's a member of the Ijo Youth Council. He is Bedford Berafat Benjamin. He joins me virtually. Good to have you join us.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be on the show this afternoon.
So I'm not sure if you followed my conversation with Reno Omokri. If you did, I would have loved to ask you what you make of some of the things he said, because he said, look, this particular resolution and intervention by the president is a welcome development.
All right. Of course, everybody has their own opinion to the issues of ground. He has given his own angle to the best of his knowledge. But for us, as your people, this is a test, a true test, and that the democracy that we, the Nigerian state, fought for over the years is being threatened. Of course, the interference, of other interested party is quite alarming, and of course, everybody wants solution. That's the reason why interferences are being made to ensure that the solution is better. But of course, for us as the job people, we are solidly behind our father, our leader, who has indeed doggedly stood for what is true and what is justice. Justice is very, very critical for us as a nation in this particularly very dicey moment in our democracy. This is a true test of what Nigeria and the democracy that we believe in. And of course, if this issue in Rivers State is not well managed, it's not micromanaged to the best of my knowledge, it will lead to the break of law and order, and that will not be very good for the economy, because Rivers State sits as a very sensitive state in the Nigerian economic projection in the next couple of years.
And you talked about justice. What does justice mean in this particular situation? And would you take justice over peace?
All right. What I mean by justice, of course, peace is golden, like they said, but peace must be justified. The issue of going to Abuja, the Aso of to bring out resolution that does not reflect the position of the people is not justice for us, and that will just give temporary peace. Of course, that is just like a time bomb that is waiting to explode. The issues that is on ground must be dealt with constitutionally. It's a constitutional issue that is on ground. 27% or 25%, sat and said no, they want to impeach a governor, and and the judiciary will play a very key role as a role of the threesome in the federal system, and the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature. Of course, the judiciary is saddled with the responsibility of interpreting whatever the law says, and the law has said that persons that have decamped from one political party to another political party does not have the moral justification to remain in that seat. There must be rerun that must be conducted, and that is the Constitution. So anything that is done outside that Constitution, gentleman agreement, does not fit in, because in the Constitution of Nigeria, Federal Republic of Nigeria, is blind to gentleman agreement. It's blind to gentleman agreement. But of course, what the Constitution has said must hold sway, not personal opinion. Of course, this is politics, and the federal government, to the best of our knowledge as a job people, has played politics, trying to woo a governor, an opposition governor. So itself, that is what is clearly playing out, and that is not justice for us. As much as we are fighting and clamoring for peace, like Fubara has rightly said, that's for the sake of peace, you will let certain things slide. Nevertheless, justice must be served. We believe in the Constitution of this country. We believe in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So anything that must bring peace must be constitutional. There's nothing anywhere in the world that is unconstitutional peace. It does not work that way. Peace, it must be constitutional, and that is what it is. And that is what we believe in.
Mr. Benjamin, parties all over the world sign agreements just to end, long-term wars. And so some will say, look, whether there are cases in court or not, an agreement sometimes, it is people who took those cases to court. And so those people can go back to court and drop those cases. But I also wanted to ask you, you have talked about, I hope I don't lose my line of thought, because we were talking about earlier how justice has not been done, and how, because it will also almost seem as though this has an ethnic coloration. Is there an ethnic coloration to this particular issue on ground?
No, of course, there's no ethnic coloration. If you watch very carefully, the Ekwere community, the Ekwere local government area in Rivers State also gave a position. They stated their position very clearly, that they cannot, they're not part of such activities that former Governor Wike is doing. Of course, it's not an ethnic matter. It's a Rivers State matter. The Rivers State yesterday, Rivers State civil servants and other well-meaning organizations came in solidarity, came in mass in solidarity. It was a Rivers State yesterday.
Benjamin Bedford, are you still there? Bedford, I want to be sure that you are there, because it looks like I've lost connection with you.
Because the constitution of the Nigerian state supersedes any form of gentleman agreement. Of course, the other party, they ran very, very swiftly to say they have withdrawn their petition against Governor Sim. Of course, they know that petition does not have any.
But is this not a win-win situation, Mr. Bedford? Because when you look at the fact that, on one hand, that impeachment proceeding, this resolution says drop the impeachment proceedings. Just hold on, Mr. Bedford. On one hand, the resolution says drop all impeachment proceedings, and on the other hand, it says the 27 lawmakers will remain as lawmakers. So is that not a win-win for all parties?
That have resigned from a system should be reinstated in the system because one fit. That is not anywhere. How will you say the 27 members that have defected to another political party should come back to that political party because we are looking for because we want a peaceful gentleman agreement. Well, it does not work that way. It does not work that way. So what like the governor, like the barrister from this other side of the end, or this side of the coin, as rightly said, they have not received any directive whatsoever to withdraw a matter, because that matter is a constitutional matter, and if this matter is carefully handled constitutionally, it will lead this country to a position of anarchy, and that's not what the president of the federation needs at this critical time in Nigerian politics. Of course, now that the River State refinery is functional, we don't want anything that will put River State into a chaotic mood. Because of course that agreement cannot stand the test of time. It's unconstitutional. The president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, in bed of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, knows that it's not constitutional. When he was governor of Lagos State, some of these activities came to truncate his governance. Of course, the people rose and said, no, this cannot happen, and he stood his ground, and justice was served. This is the same thing that is happening in this era. If it was former Governor Wike, he cannot allow this. I can imagine that a sitting governor went to River State and you withdraw a vet to say no, it was not possible from River State.
And you said, Benjamin, that you said that look,
peace must be achieved constitutionally. Allow the constitution have its just course, and of course the peace that clamors.
All right, so Benjamin, just give me a minute. I want to come in. You talked about how there is now the refinery in Port Harcourt that's the Port Harcourt Refinery 1. It has been fixed, and so you can't allow any sort of situation jeopardize that in Rivers State and bring crisis to Rivers State. And the president is the national security. People they will say the governor is the chief security officer of the country, of the state rather. The president is also the chief security officer of the country. Is it not within his duty to ensure that? Look, the Niger Delta is a cash cow of the country at this moment. Rivers State is one of those states. To ensure that, look, everything goes well in that state and the country is not destabilized. Benjamin, did you get that question? All right, so we'll take,
hello.
I want to be sure that you can hear me. Can you hear me? All right, it looks like there's a disconnection somewhere. We'll just take a break now. When we return, we'll try and reconnect with Benjamin, and then we'll return, we'll continue the conversation. We have very few minutes left, so we'll get his final thoughts on the issue.
Every major news story is with many perspectives and layered with different levels of impact.
Hello. What time did this happen? We will be right there.
At TVC News, we follow the big and major news, gathering the facts, witnessing the outcome.
I am here live at the aftermath of the approval of the new national minimum wage.
We are TV Station of the Year, not just for breaking news, but for being first, fair and accurate. TVC News, first with breaking news.
Lagos is the most visited state in Africa as the 5th largest economy on the continent. Covering the state and its government is no mean feat, it's a busy beat. We go beyond the curtain of tapes to traveling far into the deep.
I want to thank the Lagos State government for the healthcare facility.
To bring stories that cut across all spectrums.
A greater Lagos shall be ours.
We tell you stories that define our collective well-being as Lagosians. I'm Adedoja Salamadini. I live in Lagos, inside Lagos.
Every weekday on Business Nigeria, we uncover the secrets of the financial world,
breaking down intricate economic and financial matters.
We analyze the stock market, shares, bonds,
In the thrilling world of cryptocurrencies,
we unveil and analyze complex policies of the CBN and other government parastatals as they affect your everyday life, keeping you a step ahead every time.
Okay, this is edible. Facts matter. Our team dives deep to separate fact from popular opinion.
We simplify complex government policies as it impacts your everyday life, helping you navigate the ever-changing financial landscape.
Watch Business Nigeria every weekday at 2 p.m. only on TVC News. First with breaking news.
In the month of December, the 1st is World AIDS Day, while the 2nd of December is International Day for the Abolition of Slavery. On the 3rd is International Day of Persons with Disabilities. On the 4th of December, attention shifts as the day is dedicated to World Wildlife Conservation. The 7th is International Civil Aviation Day, and on the 9th is International Anti-Corruption Day. On the 10th is Human Rights Day, and on the 21st is World Basketball Day. 25th is Christmas Day, when Christians celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ. The day after.
Right, you're watching Standpoint. We've been trying to reconnect with Benjamin Bedford. There seems to be an audio challenge from his end. They can't seem to hear me, but we'll have to leave.